Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of Snowfall Season 5, Episode 7. This is the follow up to the Iliad two parter. This is where we're starting to really get the sense of what's going to happen with Kane, and this is not exactly what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, we got some answers on Kane. We got some sort of maybe answers on Peaches. We'll dive into a lot more of that. But before we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We are here every single week talking about Snowfall.
Okay, so I think the real starting off point here is that this is a huge episode for Jerome. And I think this is probably one of my favorite episodes we've ever had for Jerome because I think it really gets to the bottom of who he is and what he's been going through and some of the reluctance we've seen with him and sort of this life over these past couple of seasons.
This is my favorite episode of the season. It is my favorite Jerome episode as well. It's just, if you've been here for a while, you guys know how much I love Jerome. And, the reason why that I just connect with him so much is because he reminds me so much of my grandfather, Compton. They're both very hard on the outside to people that don't really know them, but very soft for their family, even softer for their woman. My grandpa Compton was extremely soft for my
Yeah.
my grandmother. They're both men that want to do better for their communities and want to try to bring new things into the communities. My grandfather was like that too. Jerome really wants to make this shift back where he's bringing more businesses into the community. And my grandfather, he's West Indian, so when he came to Canada, he ended up bringing things back to the West Indies where he had like an import export business to bring things back there, back home where they may not have those things, and to try to help the community. So whenever I see Jerome, I'm really connected with him. And he hit on all of those things in this episode that just like squeezed at my heart.
The whole sort of central idea of Jerome's story is it kind of kicks off here with that level of concern. He clearly does care a lot about his community and he cares a lot about Peaches. And so he's very intent on figuring out exactly what happened to Peaches. Where are they? Is there a way that he can help? And I like that we sort of had so much of Jerome sort of separate from Louie. And this is no offense to the character of Louie, by the way, who I think is phenomenal. But sort of seeing him try to navigate the office, whether it be the bribe, whether it be the doctor's appointment, like all of this sort of stuff to kind of get to the bottom of where he is. It was just kind of its own interesting little detective story for him as a character.
That whole scene with him with the doctor at the VA office, it was just very, it was the best part of this episode for me, where we had the doctor talking to Jerome, fixing his fingers, but then trying to dive a little deeper with him to kind of be like, listen, if you need some help, like, I don't know you, but you are seeming like maybe someone that might need some help, we have help here. And then we had this character Oakley come in who was like, hey, you're looking for Peaches, I know where he is, I can help you, but give me 30 minutes. I need to go sit into this group counseling that Jerome decided to go and sit in. And it was really powerful. I mean, Jerome didn't speak, or at least we didn't see him speak, but he didn't need to tell me how this was really hitting him.
I think it was profound. I think Jerome sort of comes out of all of this realizing, okay, maybe what I'm doing right now isn't the best way that I can actually help. I need to sort of take a step back. I need to examine myself. And obviously, finding Peaches still is a priority for him. And we sort of go through a lot of the different machinations there. But I think this episode really concludes for him in a spot where he's actually getting back into his roots. And I like that they're really kind of taking on mental health on this show. Like, there's such a stigma around it. And I mean, if there's a stigma around it now in 2022, I mean, go back more than 30 years to when this show was set. It was like up there on the umpteenth degree.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that was really talked about in the 80s, or, at least when I was growing up around
Yeah.
that time in the community I was in Toronto. Nobody really ever talked about that. So it was good to see that was being tackled on the show. We eventually saw Jerome go on this little bit of an adventure to find Peaches, and he ends up in this spot where he's getting information that Peaches was an addict and that he took the money and he's gone. He's in Thailand, he's wherever with
Yeah.
$5 million. And I I've seen in the comments that there's a lot of people that thought that maybe his summertime cold was that he had an addiction that he was battling and that he took the money and that he left. But if that's the case, I really do wish that they had given a little more hint towards that it was this bad, that he was this far down the hole that he would risk something like this. Because then it's okay, how did he leave the country with $5 million like in a bag? Like, it just, I don't understand how that would have happened in the 80s or now.
Yeah, like I know that security in the airline industry was probably way different in the 80s, but I still feel like somebody would have like dug around and found like the massive pile of money somewhere within all of this. Like
Yeah.
there's still there's still a part of me that questions whether or not I fully believe this, just because I think, you've mapped out the idea that Peaches may be sick, and there's all these different sort of foreshadowing moments throughout this season. It just feels like, to me, that was just the thing that made more sense for this character.
One of the theories that I've heard out there that, I really wish was true, but I don't know if it would be, is that Peaches heard that the hit was coming and he took the money and hid it for Franklin. But if that's the case, he would have reached out by now. I just don't really know if this isn't the story anymore, because we did see Leon sit down with Kane and talk about sort of Peaches and the money and everything that was going on. And he came back from that realizing that Kane just doesn't know anything about Peaches.
I think everything with Peaches is still a big part of this season. Like, I do not think we are anywhere close to the end of this story. I want to believe there's more context that is coming. I think we all need all of that. But in general, that scene with the Leon and Kane, and Leon's story just overall this episode is so fascinating, because I think it really cements who he is versus who Franklin is, where Franklin has become more of just this hardened person who is thinking mostly about the business, and Leon still has this personal perspective, this community perspective, where he is trying to sort of build the bridge and find a way to keep everything from burning, and he certainly tries his best in this episode.
Leon is some of the best character development I have ever seen on any show ever, period. He's just so good from where we first met him to where he is now. And that's why this conversation with the four of them kind of being like, well, what are we going to do about this? He took a hit out not on everybody here in the family. And Leon's perspective is, there's enough of us trying to kill each other that there has to be another way. We all know Kane forever.
Yeah.
He's basically his family and our family and everybody's family. We've all been so close. And he called it straight out and was just like, we did his family dirty. We killed Kevin and then we didn't do anything for his family. Like,
Yeah.
We are in the wrong. We need to make it right. Because if we don't make it right, he's going to do this, which he thinks is going to make it right for him. So we did have Leon sit down with Kane, and that conversation was very important because it did sort of lay out for Kane what really happened. Because Kane was kind of like, listen, I don't want any excuses. And Leon's like, I'm not here to give you excuses. I'm here to let you know what was happening and why it was happening and why it ended up playing out like this. So let us make it better for your family.
It was so good, and it's so important, because I feel like I am more in I relate more to Leon than I probably do Franklin, just because, I think I'm probably a little bit more keen to go along with an emotional angle or relationship building. And here is Leon, a guy who, remembers what the community was like, who remembers what Kane was like way back when. Like, they have this deep history. And for him, it makes perfect sense to try to facilitate something where Kane can get something out of this that's not just straight up clear cut revenge. So I side emotionally, personally with Leon, though simultaneously, if I'm Franklin, I understand having a lot of distrust over any sort of arrangement that could come out of this, because you're sort of saying, all right, here is this guy who not only just tried to kill me, tried to kill pretty much a lot of people around me. Am I really going to think that he's just going to be fine having this money and being a part of this world now?
Yeah, it's a very hard thing to trust, but I think, Franklin wasn't there for that conversation, but we all were to watch it, that it did look like Kane really was ready to take this deal, find a way to get this money, make things right for his family, that maybe revenge is not the way that he's going to go about it, to be able to build his family up. I think he's going to take the deal, but Louie, she does not think that this is the way to
No.
go about it, and she has ordered a hit on Kane.
Yeah, Louie sort of setting the stage here for, I think, a really interesting upcoming couple of episodes, because she's clearly on this very particular side of things. And I tend to believe that, I don't know, Franklin would go as far as Louie, but I think he's certainly going to be a lot more hesitant than, Leon is with a lot of this. And I think this difference of opinion is just going to make matters so much worse. And also, let's say hypothetically that whoever is out there in that moment trying to take out Kane, if Kane finds out that this is traced back to one of Franklin's people, I don't think at that point Kane's gonna be like that guy who has that level of nuance where he's like, okay, this wasn't Leon, this wasn't Franklin, this was Louie. I just think it's going to probably spark off everything again and then be a lot worse. This is a very risky move Louie is doing.
It's very risky, but I feel like this is probably the best way she could go about it, that it wouldn't be connected back to her. I mean, not a lot of people know that she has this cop that she's been working with, or that either he is going to do it, maybe he'll take some of that money and get someone else to do it, so that it could be like, a couple people removed from her. I think it's going to be tougher to trace back to her. So she may get away with it, but it's going to set off a bigger chain of events, which is exactly what Leon is trying to avoid. Franklin doesn't want to have that either. Like, it's just so much smoke for no reason, because it seems like they have found something that works for everybody.
Louie better hope that money is really good. That is like enough money that nobody is ever going to rat on her in any given situation.
Yeah, for sure. And we also have to talk about the proposal, because finally Jerome has proposed, which is something that I've been waiting for a long time. I had been hoping it was going to happen. These two have been through a lot together, and, I want to see a wedding.
The funny thing is that I keep forgetting that they're not actually married already. I think it's just because we always hear Aunt Louie and I always just Uncle Jerome. I was like, okay, all right. And so Snowfall wedding, I'm like, one part of me is immensely excited because it's so sweet, and then the other part of me is just like immensely terrified because it feels like this is the sort of world where they're not going to let us have a happy wedding.
No, this feels like this is going to turn into the Game of Thrones Red Wedding all over again, where this hit is going to happen on Kane. A bunch of people that are around Kane are going to find out what's going to happen, and that it has to do with Louie, and that wedding is going to turn into a problem.
I'm gonna be really sad, and it's a messed up way too, because if Louie dies at the wedding, I mean, she, in a sense, she doesn't have anyone to blame other than herself for putting the hit out there, but at the same time, I don't want to see it happen.
Yeah, and I think Louie's a really important character to this particular family and world, because we do have Leon, who's more into the let's communicate and find a way to stop each other from, dying. Then you've got Louie, who's on the other side, who's just pure revenge. Listen, it's got to be done. This is the way that it has to be done. And Franklin, who's kind of in the middle, where sometimes he'll side with Leon and be like, okay, yeah, there is another way. We can talk it out. We can throw money at the situation. And sometimes he's on Louie's side, where he's like, no, it has to be an eye for an eye.
All right, it's 14 minutes in. We got to talk about Teddy. Teddy. What a weirdo Teddy is. I mean, we already knew he was a weirdo before this season, but I don't know. I feel like this is the Snowfall producers' way of just like tormenting us at this point. That they're like, okay, we're gonna give you all this good stuff, and then we're gonna make you watch Teddy and Parissa and whatever is developing in this relationship here. I don't know if I really need it, but we're getting it anyway.
Yeah, it feels like that story is mostly over at this point, and I'm more interested in what his relationship with Franklin
Yes.
is right now, because that whole talk with them where, Gustavo told Teddy, by the way, Sissy's back in town, and this is, I never side with Teddy because he's my least favorite character on the show, but he's not wrong to kind of just have this talk with Franklin where he's like, listen, Peaches is in the wind, all the money's gone, your mother's back in town, and we had a deal about that. Like, you're getting really sloppy, you're taking on these big business ventures they're very high profile, and your name is getting out there. This is not what I am signed up for. I am signed up for this trade quiet, but you're not quiet anymore, and you've got problems in your organization. So everything needs to be just clamped down now, and that's the way it's going to be going forward, to the point that we even saw Teddy have all this recording equipment where he's kind of like, Gustavo, like, this is just the way it needs to be.
I understand where Teddy is coming from in this situation as well. The funniest thing about this is I got to think somewhere in Teddy's head, he probably must be, do I think Franklin's actually going to listen to this? At this point, him saying no more big business deals. You got to do things fully on my terms. I don't want, any other people here, just you. It's like, okay, I think maybe there's like a 5% chance Franklin listens and then he shows up by himself at the next meeting, but that's only like 5%. I think there's like a 1% chance Franklin is going to slow down any of his real estate business at this point.
The problem is Franklin has his foot in multiple camps where he wants things to be more legitimate and move in a different direction, and he's trying to find a way to do that, but he also still has his foot in this drug trade and with Teddy and everything that's going on, and he really can't seem to have both things. It's just not really working. But also, speaking about recordings, we had this very quick scene where we saw Sissy working in the office after she had come out of Franklin's office and opened her drawer with a purse in there that had a recording device in it. It didn't look like the pen. My eyesight isn't that great. It looked like a recording device. And I was like, okay, did she have it in there with him? Because we didn't see really that part. She was holding onto her purse. Was it actually recording? Is she thinking about recording? Like, what is happening with that?
What is happening is Sissy about to get everybody in a whole lot of trouble. Like,
maybe.
I'm really worried.
I just don't understand it. She was so against doing anything that was going to put her son in any danger. And now all of a sudden there's a different recording device. It's not the pen that she was originally given.
I think my fear is just that the longer that all of this goes on and the longer that Teddy is still kind of clearly around this world, if she's not finding any sort of space to heal or deal with everything that happened with Alton, whatever that may be. I mean, we already talked about the idea that maybe he's actually still alive, but ultimately, I think the longer that her and Teddy exist in this world together, I think the more willing she's going to be to take a risk, even if that means a risk that endangers Franklin, because I just feel like eventually her paranoia is going to get the best of her, and she's going to start wondering, oh, is Teddy going to come after me now? Is he going to come out? Is he going to do something to Franklin if he doesn't get his way? And so that's where a lot of my fear lies with it. But just like Louie, she's taking a risk, and this is what I do like about Snowfall this season, is that characters are acting with their own perceived self-interest. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to end up well for them in the end, but there aren't a lot of followers right now. There are just a lot of leaders.
I think I wish that they had just had a little bit less of the Parissa storyline in this episode and more on what Sissy's actually doing. They introduced a really juicy storyline with her, and then there really hasn't been that much follow-up on it and what she's been doing. It's just that she's been, according to Franklin, meddling in his relationship. But I mean, we are seeing sort of these signs that her pregnancy, it's not in trouble, but
Yeah.
at the same time, she is under tremendous amount of stress. And that is not good for early terms in pregnancy. And if she can't get a handle on it, I mean, they're already kind of talking a little bit about that on the show, and that she's having cramping, and that she's trying to get past this part where it's like more common to have this happen.
I'm really, really worried for this baby. And there's 3 episodes left here. And over the course of them, I think we have to expect someone's probably going to die, whether it is, unfortunately, V, her unborn baby, whether it is Louie or Jerome. I think this is a show that's often about consequences. And in the past, we saw a lot of that in the form of what was going on with Wanda and her addiction. And I think now that Wanda is, thankfully and fingers crossed, continuing to be doing better, I think those consequences are going to come in another way.
I think Louie's gonna die, and I know that my theories so far have been wrong this season, but I just have a really bad feeling about it with some of what has been going on in this. There's too much happiness going on with her and Jerome getting ready to sort of get back into the community and get things together for himself. She's taking really big risks, and she's not telling anybody really that she's doing them.
It's going to be probably a very emotional next few episodes, so buckle up, everybody. Subscribe so you don't miss our discussions, including a possibly really sad one if Louie does get killed. Also, follow us on Instagram at Matt and Jess TV, and we will see you here next time.